Once again, welcome everyone. This is the ranked choice voting information session, and I have with me the Deputy City Clerk John Klaus and Maria Perez from Democracy Rising. Democracy Rising is a nonprofit firm that the city retained to help the city to do ranked choice voting outreach. They've worked with many different jurisdictions on ranked choice voting and with voter and candidate trainings. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Maria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and hi, everybody. Thank you for prioritizing this training into your busy lives and into your time this evening. Again, my name is Maria Perez. I am a co-director of a nonpartisan nonprofit organization called Democracy Rising. Our main work has to do with voter outreach and education around democracy reforms like ranked choice voting. We've done candidate and community trainings in a number of jurisdictions in cities in New York State, Michigan, Utah, New Mexico, California, and the state of Alaska and others. So again, our goal is just to make sure that voters really understand the changes that are coming to their community, and also to help candidates sort of think through the different changes in terms of how it will change their campaigns and their strategies. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Oops. Let's start from the beginning. That helps. Okay. So our agenda today, we are scheduled together for a 2-hour session. I'm anticipating that it will last about that long. Our first, outside of this welcome, I'll go over some sort of ground rules and logistics in a moment. But outside of that, we will spend about half our time really taking a deep dive into ranked choice voting, what it is, how it works, go through some examples, make sure that everybody on this training is clear and has their questions answered. So the first half of our training really is adequate and appropriate for anybody who has an interest in those changes that are coming to your city. We will also spend some time talking about how to talk about ranked choice voting, right? This can be a little bit complicated. So if some of you are candidates or are working in campaigns, you are definitely going to want to learn some best practices about how to in very simple terms, talk to voters, explain to voters about this change and what they need to know. And even if you're not a candidate or working in a campaign, maybe you're just a very engaged citizen, you're going to be talking to your friends and neighbors and family members about these changes. You want to stay for that portion of the training so that you can get some tips on how best to talk about this. And then the last part of our training, everybody's welcome to attend, to participate, to be there, ask questions. But the last part of our training really is getting a little bit more in the weeds in terms of how ranked choice voting would change a campaign for a candidate that is considering running for office. What kind of strategies do you need to think about a little bit differently because of the way that ranked choice voting works? So this is open for everybody at all stages, but I just wanted to make sure about that people know which parts we're going over in which order, and you are welcome to stay as long as you want, or if you've gotten what you need, you're also welcome to jump off at any point. As far as our training today, I'm going to be going through these sections. There's going to be strategic pauses throughout the training to make sure that we can answer some of your questions. If you do have questions, we are going to be handling that through the Q&A on your Zoom. So just if you have a question, just make sure to type it in there. And our friends at the city clerk's office will be managing that Q&A and floating up questions that can be answered that way. So please, if you do have questions, put them on the Q&A and we'll get to as many of those as we can. Okay. let's get going. Ranked choice voting 101. We're going to go to basic information about what this is, how it works. And the first thing that I want to say here is that, as many of you may know, ranked choice voting has been the election method in some of the Bay Area cities right around Albany, right? So Oakland, Berkeley, San Leandro have ranked choice voting, and then San Francisco on the other side of the water also has ranked choice voting. The ranked choice voting method that Albany is going to be using is just a little bit different because you all will be electing multiple winners for the seats that are opening. So there's going to be 2 winners for city council, and they're not going to be elected by districts. They're going to be elected by the whole city at large. And the same thing is true for the Board of Elections. There's going to be 3 seats open. So 3 winners, which are not going to be elected by districts. They're going to be elected at large. So we'll get into that a little bit, but just a point of clarification. If you've maybe lived in Oakland or in San Leandro before, and you've gone through a ranked choice voting election, it's very, very similar, but there's some little changes that we'll go over today. So first of all, let's talk about how Albany got here with this change in the way that you're going to be electing your city council members and your Board of Education. So Measure BB was placed on the ballot for Albany voters in 2020. Measure BB would establish ranked choice voting as the means of electing members of the City Council and the Board of Education. And 73% of Albany voters voted yes on that measure. And therefore now there is this change, and it's going to be implemented in this upcoming election. Another thing that I want to be really clear about is my organization, Democracy Rising. We work on voter outreach and education. We don't do advocacy work. We were not involved in the campaign for Measure BB or anything like that. We don't have any dog in this race except for wanting every voter in Albany to be aware of the change and to be as empowered as they can be as a voter, with taking into consideration that voting will be a little bit different this year, this cycle. So now what? Voters approved this measure. Now it's time to implement. So let's talk about what ranked choice voting is. Ranked choice voting is a very simple change to the way that a ballot is designed and the way that the votes are counted. So with ranked choice voting, here is a sample ballot on the right side of the screen that we will be using for the purpose of this training. So when we are looking at a sample ballot and we're talking about ranked choice voting and examples about this evening, our candidates are going to be lunch items. So our candidates are listed on the left-hand column on this mock ballot that you can see on the screen. Our lunch choices are chicken, dumplings, burger, pizza, tacos, and sandwich. So those are the candidates. As a voter, you would look at this ballot, you will decide, okay, what is my favorite meal out of these choices? What is the thing that I really, really want to have right now? For me as a voter, that would be tacos. I'm always up for tacos. I love tacos. So as a voter, I would look at this ballot. I would find tacos on the left-hand column. And then I would look for the first choice column to the right of that. And I will fill that oval under first choice next to tacos, which is my favorite candidate. So my first choice is going to be the candidate that I love. The advantage of a ranked ballot is that you get to identify who your backup choices are, right? So in my case, I love tacos, but if for whatever reason I can't have tacos, maybe they ran out of tacos, maybe tacos like nobody else wanted tacos, so it's not a viable option, I get to identify what my backup choices are. So my second choice is going to be the candidate that I like. If I can't have tacos, what am I going to have? For me, that choice personally is pizza. I can always eat some pizza. That's fine. So my first choice would be tacos. I go under the second choice column. I find pizza on the left side column, and I would fill that oval for pizza as my second choice, and so on and so forth, right? So the third choice will be the candidate that you like a little bit less, but you would still be pretty happy about having that lunch today. fourth choice can be the candidate that you can stand. So even if there's, even if you don't love a candidate, you might prefer that candidate to other choices. I'll give you an example for me. I'm a vegetarian, so on this ballot, I don't really want chicken or a burger, right? So I'll rank every other candidate except for the ones that I really don't want elected. As a voter, you're never asked to rank a candidate that you absolutely don't want elected. You just rank the candidates that you like to whatever degree that you like them on your ballot, and leave out the candidates that you absolutely don't want elected out of your ballot. You don't have to rank them. You can, but you don't have to. Okay, so let's move on. Once you're a voter, you got your ballot, you've identified your favorite, your next favorite after that. Then let's talk about how the votes are going to be counted. So with a ranked choice voting election, how many votes a candidate needs to win depends on how many seats are going to be filled. So this is the only part of this presentation where I'm really going to get into math. Well, there's one other piece, but we're going to keep it super simple. Okay, there's rhyme and reason to how this works. If you are electing one winner to one seat, let's say that it was a mayor that you're electing for the whole city. You're not using ranked choice voting in Albany to elect your mayor, but let's just give an example, right? We have one seat that needs to be filled. We're using ranked choice voting. To get to a majority of the vote for one seat, you need half of the votes plus one, right? That guarantees that candidate that reaches 50% plus one has the support of the majority of the voters. So that's what happens if you're just filling one seat for one winner. In your case, for city council, you're going to be electing two winners to fill two seats in your city council. And again, this is going to be citywide, a citywide vote at large. And to elect two candidates, you need 1/3 of the vote plus one. So it's the same logic as for one winner, you need 1/2 of the vote plus one. If you are electing two winners, you need 1/3 of the vote plus one. This just guarantees that no more than two people can get 33% plus one. And this logic continues, right? For Board of Education, you're going to be electing three winners. So for three winners, you need 1/4 of the vote plus one, 25% plus one. Again, this just guarantees that no more than three candidates can reach that threshold, right? If you had more, it would add up to more than 100%. This is a little bit confusing for some people. We're going to have time to ask questions and revisit. But for now, I'm just going to let that information, you sit with that information, see if it makes sense to you as we continue. And we'll take a pause in a few minutes to talk about all this and get your questions. Okay, so we have our winning threshold. In our examples today, we're going to be talking about the city council race in a fictional city that is electing two lunch items, right? So our winning threshold for our exercise today is going to be two winners, and that winning threshold is going to be 33% plus one. So again, just a reminder of what your ballot is going to look like and what you are going to be asked to do as a voter. So this voter got their ballot and they thought, okay, a burger sounds excellent to me right now. I love burgers. I really want to have a burger for lunch. That would be my first choice. But if I can't have a burger, my second choice would be tacos. I'd be happy enough with tacos. And if they don't have burger or tacos, I guess I'll be okay with chicken. And I prefer pizza to a sandwich. This person basically really doesn't want a sandwich, right? So easy as that. We rank stuff all the time. We rank things from a menu every time you go to a restaurant or every time you go to see a movie with friends. You figure out what is the consensus thing that you're all going to do together that most of you agree to do. This is very much the same, except that we're talking about candidates. So I'm a voter. I filled out this ballot. Let's see how the votes are counted. So in a ranked choice voting election, once all the ballots are in and it's time to count the votes, The voting machines will look at voters' first choice and only at voters' first choice. So your backup choices, your second choice, your third choice will not be looked at all on the first round of counting, right? On the first round of counting, we only look at everybody's favorite first choice vote. In this election, when this city is looking at what lunch item people want to have, looking only at first choice votes, we see that chicken came as a favorite candidate for a lot of people, but it didn't quite reach the threshold of 33% +1 to be elected, right? You see that dotted line on top, that's our winning threshold. So chicken came close, but not quite there yet. Hamburger came in second, and then the other candidates sort of trail behind a little bit. But in this case, none of the candidates reached that winning threshold of 33% +1 of the vote on the first round of counting. So what happens now? This is where ranked choice voting, your rankings come into play. If no candidate reaches that winning threshold on the first round of counting, what we do in a ranked choice election is we eliminate the candidate that got the least amount of support, of first choice vote support. So in this case, it's tacos. Maybe tacos just didn't run a good campaign. Maybe they just got lazy. Maybe they didn't have enough money. For whatever reason, tacos just couldn't pull it together. It was not a viable candidate in terms of people's first choice votes. We eliminate tacos, and then we see those voters that prefer tacos, we see which candidate is listed next on their ballot as their next choice. And we allocate those votes automatically to their next choice on their ballot. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we've eliminated tacos. We're now on the second round of counting. We can see that the majority of the people who like tacos as their first choice preferred chicken as the next choice on their ballot. So chicken was like their strong backup plan. And we can see in yellow how we have added those votes to the count of chicken votes on that chicken column. And then some of the voters that like tacos as their first choice preferred a hamburger as their second choice. So we again see in yellow on top of the hamburger vote count that we have added those votes that used to be with taco, but now the taco is eliminated, are now with hamburger. After this second round of counting, we can see that chicken reached the winning threshold, right? So chicken is definitely one of our two winners. Remember, we're filling 2 seats, so we need to identify 2 winners. Chicken got there. As a matter of fact, chicken got more votes than it needed, right? You see that dotted line, that was the threshold that chicken needed. So more votes than it needed to get elected. And hamburger is getting really close to reaching that threshold, but hasn't reached it yet. So after the second round of counting, we have one of the 2 winners, chicken. And since we don't have the second winner yet, we need to go through that process again. So let's look at what happens. First of all, there is this process where if a candidate gets more votes than it needed to be elected, those surplus votes, right, those extra votes that it got, we don't want those votes to go to waste. So those are called the surplus votes, and every voter that voted for chicken gets a tiny portion of their vote for chicken count for their next choice on their ballot. So for example, let's say that chicken received 10% more votes than they needed to win, then every voter who ranked chicken, who was responsible for getting chicken elected, will have 1/10 of their vote count towards their next choice. And you can see this, how we did this in black, right? So some of the chicken voters preferred hamburger as their next choice. 1/10 of that vote for each of those voters will go to hamburger, and the same for those voters who preferred chicken, whose next choice was a sandwich. So a little portion of that vote goes to the sandwich candidate. That part can also be a little bit confusing, but I'll let you sit with it and we'll answer your questions in a moment. However, Having done this process, we can see that hamburger just barely reached that 33% +1 threshold. So now we have our two winners. We have chicken and hamburger. Those two candidates got the support of the majority of the voters between the two of them, right? They're the consensus candidates. And now we have our two winners that are going to fill those two seats. I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions and places where people tend to have confusion. And after these, we will pause and take some of your questions. So these are questions that we get all the time. How many candidates do I rank? Do I have to use every ranking? The answer to that is absolutely not. As a voter, you can rank as many or as few candidates as you want. Again, your second choice, your third choice, etc., your backup choices are not going to be looked at until and unless your favorite candidate is eliminated. So your vote will always stay with the highest ranking candidate on your ballot that is still in the race. If your candidate never gets eliminated, your vote will never go anywhere else. So rank as many or as few as you like. My recommendation is rank all of the candidates that you love, like, or can live with. This is doesn't happen too often, but is a common misconception that ranking your favorite candidate as your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice is a good strategy because somehow this supercharges your vote for your favorite candidate. And I just want to take some time to explain why this is a misconception. This voter really likes burgers. They want a burger no matter what. If they can't have a burger, they don't care what else they have. Ranking burger as all of their choices is exactly the same as ranking burger as their first choice and leaving the rest of the ballot empty. Because let's say that we're on the second round of counting and burger gets eliminated. If burger gets eliminated, the voting machine is going to look for this voter's next choice on their ballot. This voter's next choice on the ballot is burger. Burger was eliminated. Then the machine's going to look to the next choice on their ballot. Their next choice is burger. Burger was eliminated, right? So you can see how this strategy doesn't really supercharge your vote for burger at all. You are better off ranking burger as your first choice. And then if there is another candidate that you can live with, that you like, maybe less than you like burger, but that you can live with, you should rank them as your second choice. This is related to the first question. Does it hurt my favorite candidate to rank a second, a third, or a fourth choice on my ballot? Absolutely not. Those, again, are just your backup choices. Your second choice will only be counted if your first choice is eliminated or is already elected. And this is true for your third choice, right? Your third choice will only be counted if your first and second choice candidates are eliminated and so forth. So having those second and third choice rankings is just a way for you to make sure that your vote is going to be in play, even if the candidate you love doesn't have a chance to win. You can still vote your conscience. You can still give your first choice vote to the candidate you really love. And if they're not a viable candidate for whatever reason, your vote will still be in play. Your vote will still count in who gets elected ultimately to these positions, these elected positions in your community. This is a mistake that we see almost never, but this is a mistake that you absolutely don't want to make because this disqualifies this race, this ballot for this race only, right? If you rank all of the candidates as your first choice, there is no way for the machine to understand what your intent was as a voter, right? We can't tell if you have a preference, if you like chicken better than dumplings, if you care who gets elected. This ballot really isn't giving any information in terms of what your intent was as a voter. The machine can't give 1/5 of the vote to each of the candidates. It's one vote or no vote at all. So if you do make this mistake, this is not going to count. The machine just can't count this as a vote. So you have the opportunity to fill in, request a different ballot to fix that mistake. And if you vote by mail, that might be problematic. So this is something definitely that you want to make sure you don't do, and that you explain to others not to do this as well. But again, we almost never see this mistake. Okay, let's stop there for a moment, and I'll be happy to answer some questions. What kind of questions do we have?
Actually, I think you answered two of them in while you're presenting. And just to confirm, one of the question that you just answered regarding marking more than one candidate for the same choice. The question was, what if someone is confused or screwed up and votes for 2 first choice or 2 second choice, etc.? I believe that the ballot is also invalid, correct?
That's correct.
And then the other question that we have is, what is the difference between plain old ranked choice voting, RCV, and ranked choice voting at large? How much of what you will be saying is in general for RCV, and how much will be specific to Albany's voting method of at large?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the difference between, again, the difference between ranked choice voting, the way that it's more commonly used, and it's used in those 4 jurisdictions in the Bay Area, is that they elect a single winner by district, right? So there's in Oakland, there's, I believe, 7 districts or something like this. Each district has a ranked ballot that elects 1 winner per district, right? So for the ballot is going to look the same as your ballot, in the sense that you're going to get the names of the candidates on the left-hand column, and you're going to get those columns to the right of that being your choices in order: first choice, second choice, third choice. As a voter, your experience is going to be the same with both kinds of ranked choice voting, whether it's at large, whether it's by district, whether you're electing 1 winner or multiple winners. So you just rank the candidates in order of preference, and there's no difference. The difference is in how the votes are tabulated and what those winning thresholds are, as we described. So that's what's going to be specific to Albany in this training, is the conversations that we're going to have about the winning threshold and about that win number, and how more than 1 candidate is going to be elected. So I hope that's helpful to you. Once we get into the next section, which is how to talk to people about ranked choice voting, we're going to get into this a little more in depth, because the difference for the voters really is very minimal, if any, the way that you'll be talking about it.
Okay, and that's all the questions. And just a reminder for the attendees, we are not taking questions by raising your hand. We are taking the questions through Q&A. So if you have a question, please go ahead and type in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for the reminder. And even though we're moving to our next section right now, we are doing great on time. If you still have a question about the very basics of ranked choice voting and how it works as we get moving, just ask any question you may have through the remainder of this training. I'm happy to loop back, and we can go back to a slide if that's helpful to you. My goal, again, is just to make sure that everybody feels super clear about how this is going to work, and that you have an opportunity to get your questions answered. Okay, so let's talk about how to talk about ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is, as you know now, if you didn't know before, a little bit complicated to talk about, right? And there's many a rabbit hole that you can dive into. So I'm going to give you some tips as to how not to do that, how to keep your simple message on point, and how to make sure that whoever you are talking to about this is going to feel better about it and more clear about it after you have their conversation. So the main thing you need to know at this point, it being the first implementation of ranked choice voting in your city of Albany, is that there's a good chance that some voters won't know anything about ranked choice voting, right? Maybe they've never heard about it. Maybe they didn't vote on the election where Measure BB passed. There's going to be some people that just know nothing about it, and this is going to be brand new to them. There's also going to be a number of people in your community that are going to know about ranked choice voting because either they were involved in the campaign, they remember voting for or against the measure. And also because it's the Bay Area, right? There's many people in your community that has lived in Oakland or San Leandro or Berkeley or San Francisco and has perhaps had experience as a voter voting in a ranked choice voting election. So just know that you're going to encounter all kinds of voters with all kinds of levels of education about ranked choice voting, and also all kinds of opinions about it, right? Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to have no opinion about it. So when you are getting ready to talk about ranked choice voting, maybe you're doing a community presentation, or maybe you're just talking to your neighbor, just know that you first have to assess kind of where that person is, right? Do they already know about it? If so, do they have an opinion about it? It's also really good to remember that change can be very difficult for people, right? If there's an elder in your community who has been voting the old way for 40 years, they may not feel comfortable about a big change like this. And change can be very difficult, and educating voters, we have to ease them into feeling comfortable about a big change. So that's, as a person that's going to be educating voters, you should sort of keep this in mind, all of this in mind when you are talking to people. Having said all that, there are a few best practices that I will share with you today in terms of how to talk to people about ranked choice voting. First of all, do not get bogged down in the theoretical. When you're talking to people, remember right before I was answering a question about how much of this is specific to Albany's ranked choice voting election and how much of this information is general to ranked choice voting in general. In my experience, having been working on voter education on ranked choice voting for many years in many jurisdictions with many different types of ranked choice voting, what voters really need to know is three basic things. One, this election, your ballot is going to be a little bit different, right? It's going to look a little bit different. And that ballot is going to give you an opportunity to rank candidates in order of preference. So your first choice will be the candidate you love, second choice, the candidate you like, third choice, the candidate you can live with, etc. And the third thing that voters will need to know is using that ballot, we're going to be electing 2 city council members. The whole city is going to be voting on this, right? So explaining to people that there's no districts, it's a city at large elections, that 2 winners are going to be determined by this one ballot, and that the ballot is going to be a little bit different, and that people basically just need to rank candidates in order of preference. That is what 99% of the voters need to know and want to know. You don't need to talk about tabulation. Please don't. You don't need to talk about algorithms or machine redistribution of votes or surplus votes and how one fraction of the vote is going to go to the next choice on your ballot. These are things that I'm mentioning to you because we're getting in the weeds here a little bit. We're going deep, and I want to make sure that you understand the ins and outs of this. Your run-of-the-mill voter does not have any interest in knowing any of this. And if you encounter that unicorn voter that really gets into this tabulation, voting machines, algorithms, and all that, I strongly recommend that you don't talk about it, but that you say, oh, the city or the county has great information on those kind of questions. Here's the web address, right, for their website. There's a number of resources for you to direct people to get information into the more complicated math-like aspects of this. As an educator, you just need to make sure that voters know those 3 things that we went over, and we'll go over that a few more times. The next thing is avoid jargon. So this is related to the first point. When you are talking to voters, your goal is to make sure that they feel comfortable, that they're confident that they're going to be able to use the ballot in a way that is going to make their vote count, and they feel, they have power in who gets elected, right? That their vote is going to count as they intended it to, and that the election is going to be secure, and that they're confident, and that they're comfortable. Those are your goals when you're educating voters. Talking about, again, about algorithms or vote redistribution or things that only kind of like a policy wonky person would know, even those terms, is not a way to make the average voter feel confident or comfortable. So this leads us to our next point, best practice, which is keep it simple. Best practice really is to keep your message to like a 5th grade level. Keep the message very simple, very consistent. Don't go down rabbit holes. Keep it really based on the 3 points that you want your voters to know about, which is your ballot's going to look a little bit different. To use this ballot, you need to rank the candidates in order of preference. We're going to be electing 2 winners for city council. The whole city's going to be voting on the same ballot, and we're going to get 2 winners out of this one ballot. When things get a little bit confusing, complicated for the voter, there you can see that they're perhaps getting confused. Bring it back to the voters and their values, right? This is about you as a voter. Like this new way of voting, this ranked choice ballot really allows you as a voter to really vote your conscience. You can rank your favorite candidate #1 on your ballot, regardless of whether that candidate has a chance of winning or not. The cool thing about ranked choice voting is that your vote will not be wasted. If you use your ballot and you rank your candidates, even if your candidate is not viable, if you have a backup choice, your vote will still be in play. That brings it back to the voters and their values, right? What voters want to know is that their vote means something, that it's worth their time and their while to fill a ballot and to actually vote in an election, because their vote will not be wasted. That is huge for voters. So just bring it back to that. As long as you rank your ballot, you identify your favorite candidate and a couple of backup choices, your vote's going to be in play. Your voice will be part of selecting who is going to be representing our community. And lastly, just reminding people that we rank things all the time, right? This morning, you all got up, and if you had to work outside of your home, you opened your closet and you saw a few outfits and you ranked, right? Which outfit am I wearing today? And maybe it's really hot today, so I'm gonna wear the linen pants. But maybe I really have a fancy meeting, so I'm actually gonna wear a suit. We rank things, right? We have a number of options. You make a decision. Again, you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu and you basically rank those items. You figure out what you want, and if the server comes and tells you like we're out of that item, you have a backup choice, and that's how we do it. If you have many kids, right? If you have more than one kid, it's a ranking exercise to figure out what activity you're going to do with your kids. Maybe somebody wants to go to the playground. Maybe somebody wants to go to the movies. You find out what the consensus activity is through a process of ranking, much like this. And then you ensure that the majority of the kids are doing an activity that they can get behind. So reminding people that we rank things every day is good. It's a good practice, and it's just the fact that we're not used to doing it with our candidates. Having said all that, the absolute best way to educate people is to show them a ballot and to have it fill it out. We really recommend not ever having a ballot with the names of actual people, and certainly not actual candidates on them. And there's a reason for that, right? We've used all kinds of mock candidates in these mock ballots. Lunch items, national parks, favorite 50s rock and roll singers, authors, you know, like you can use anything, flavors of pizza, ice cream flavors, anything is good as long as there's choices that people will have some sort of opinion on, right? So lunch items, food items is usually a good stand-in for candidates because people do have opinions about food, right? More than say if you had colors or something like that, like maybe you like blue a little bit better than green, but you don't have like a strong opinion about it. Food tends to be something that people can get excited about and feel kind of competitive about if you're doing a mock election, or even if you're just having them fill out a mock ballot. So if you're doing voter education work, if you're working for an organization that is doing GOTV work and is wanting to make sure that voters know there's an election coming up and that the ballot's going to be looking a little different, just have a mock ballot with you that that you can, you know, if you're door knocking, you just go up to the door. Once they open the door, you can say, hey, I'm so-and-so with this organization. I just want to make sure you know there's an election coming up. Our ballots are going to look a little bit different. This is what they're going to look like. And this is what you're being asked to do, is to rank the candidates in order of preference. So can you please rank in order of preference these lunch items? And people intuitively know what to do. They do it right there. They have that experience of looking, right? The sort of visual aid, they look at what the ballot is basically going to look like. And then they have the kinetic experience of actually figuring out their rankings and filling in those ovals. Doing that, it takes 3 minutes per voter. You've educated that voter. They know everything they need to know about what the ballot is going to look like, right? And how to use it. Mock elections are an excellent way to educate voters. And by mock election, I mean, you can organize, right, an election. I've done many of these. For example, I will reach out to a local pizza parlor or ice cream parlor or something like that and say, we'd love to hold a mock election here to educate voters about the upcoming election. What you ask of the proprietor of a business is, can you have, you know, 5 different flavors of pizza available that day? I will bring the customers, and each person can pay $5 for 5 tiny little slices of pizza. They'll be ranking the pizzas in the order that they like them, and then we'll be deciding through ranked choice voting what the favorite pizza is, or in the case of Albany, what the favorite 2 pizzas are, right? Because you're electing 2 people for city council. This is a great way to do it. Businesses love it, voters love it. Press will come to these kinds of events if you invite them, and then you'll have a little write-up that will reach then even more voters. It's a fun way to learn. And I highly recommend doing something like this if you're able to. But whether you do a mock election or not, just having that visual aid of what the ballot's going to look like, including giving them the opportunity to fill out their own rankings, so that you don't give them a filled out ballot, but rather give them the opportunity to fill out a ballot. That's the best way that there is to educate voters on this new election method. All right, let's break for some questions again.
Okay. We have the first question. To clarify, did you say 100% of your second choice vote is counted if your candidate was eliminated and some fraction of your second choice vote is counted if your first choice candidate got above the threshold, and 0% of your second choice vote is counted if your candidate is in neither of these situations?
Yes, let me sort of rephrase this, and I'm hoping that I'm answering this in the way that you asked it. So these are three scenarios, right? In one scenario, my first choice vote went to a candidate that got eliminated. And in that case, my whole entire vote is going to automatically count for the next choice on my ballot. So 100% of my vote is going to go to my second choice. Okay, that's one scenario. The other scenario is my first choice vote is still in the race, did not get eliminated. Then my vote will just stay with my favorite candidate with my first choice vote. My whole entire vote will not move, or any fraction of it will not move, as long as my vote is with that candidate that is still in the race. That's the second scenario there. The third scenario is my vote is with my first choice candidate, and through a round of elimination, my candidate, my favorite candidate, got elected and actually got more votes than it needed to win, right? So let's say that my candidate needed 100 votes to win, but instead got 110 votes to win. So it got 10% more votes than it needed, right? So of all 110 people who had their vote on that winning candidate, now have 10% of their vote go to their second choice. This is the surplus vote part, and it's the most confusing thing to explain. And again, voters, the run-of-the-mill voter, will not even want to know about this, but that's how it works, right? So that no candidate is getting more votes than it needs, right? As a voter, you help elect somebody, but you don't want to waste any portion of your vote. So you helped elect somebody. If they got 10% more votes than they needed, 1/10 of your vote is going to go to the next choice on your ballot. Whoever asked that question, please let me know if that made sense. You can put it on the Q&A. And if it didn't, I'm happy to go back to the slide and help explain it again, because I just want to make sure that everybody on this training understands those three scenarios.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was going to say, Brian, if you need more further detail, please put it in the Q&A again. And there's another question. In the past, we would vote for two candidates if there are two openings, and both votes would be counted. Now with RCV at large, if we're electing two city council members and there are lots of candidates, does RCV at large mean only our first choice is counted if two candidates break the threshold on the first round?
Yes, if there, so the rounds, right, additional rounds of counting, second round, third round, etc., only get triggered if no candidates won on the first round. But if only counting people's first choice votes, this is within the realm of possibility, right? That only looking at people's first choice votes, we get two candidates on the first round reaching that winning threshold of 33% of the vote plus one. That's the end of the election. So your vote, nobody's second choice votes will be looked at that point, because in the first round of counting, where only everybody's first choice votes are looked at, we already have two winning candidates.
Okay, and I also wanted to remind everyone, I know that Maria is referring to two openings for city council, but this same method, I guess, applies for Board of Education, if you're here for if you're interested in Board of Education race or running for Board of Education, we have 3 seats open for Board of Education. The threshold is a little bit different, but the basic idea is the same. And it'll be just electing 3 instead of 2.
That's correct. Thank you, Anne. And just a reminder, right? If you're electing 2 people for 2 seats, the winning threshold is 1/3 of the vote plus 1. And if you're electing 3 people, it's 1/4 of the vote plus 1, and so forth. So for Board of Education, if you're interested in that race, in order to win, you'll need to get 25% of the vote plus 1.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions, Anne?
No, that's it so far.
Okay, again, feel free to, this is the confusing part, right? So like, feel free to, if anything comes up for you as we continue, even if it's stuff that we've already answered, please keep bringing it up as we go. All right, so now we are moving into how ranked choice voting change campaigns and campaign strategies. If you are here because you are running for office, or you're interested in running for office, or you are interested in working or volunteer for somebody's campaign, this is important information for you. If you're a member of the public at large and you want to get in the weeds a little more, please do stay. This training is open for everybody. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware on this call that we're getting a little bit more in the weeds as far as campaigns and information that is useful for campaigns and campaign teams for the next section of the training. So let's get started with this. In order to win a ranked choice voting campaign, more than with other ways of electing candidates to office, the strategy really is to build a winning coalition. And by coalition, I mean coalition of voters. When there's a crowded field of candidates, and it seems mathematically unlikely, right, that somebody can win with just first choice votes. Let's say that there's, 7 candidates for a race and somebody needs to get 33% of the vote plus 1. It's possible that somebody could get that just with first choice votes, but it is much more likely that candidates will need to get those second choice votes and even those third choice votes to reach that winning threshold. So when we're talking about what's the best strategy to win a ranked choice voting campaign, it is to build a winning coalition of voters that include your primary base of people who support you and are going to rank you as their first choice candidate, but also building out the support of voters who may prefer another candidate as their favorite, but who like you pretty well and are willing to rank you as their second choice, as their backup candidate. So please keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation. Okay, so as a candidate, if you've ran for office before, you know that the most important thing to know is what your vote goal is, right? What your win number is in terms of how many votes you need to get. So we're going to get through that. This is maybe something that is redundant to some of you, and it may be newer information for some of you. So we're just going to go through it together. In order to figure out what your win number is, what the number of votes that you actually need to get is, you first need to determine the expected turnout. So we are talking about a fictional city named X that is electing lunch items again, right? 2 lunch items for the whole city. So in order to determine expected turnout, these are some best campaign practices. You use the average of 3 or more similar past election. In this case, there's not a similar election in the sense that Albany hasn't used ranked choice ballots before, right? Ranked choice voting to elect 2 winners for city council at large. But there's still been city council elections in the past, right? Like similar city council elections where, so if you're running for city council during an election cycle where there's not a mayoral election, for example, then you would go to those 3 past elections where there was a city council race without a mayoral race, right? So you figure out what the turnout was for those 3 elections and you average them out. So I've done this research in City X. City X has 12,000 registered voters, but the average of the 3 past similar elections was that about 40% of the voters turned out to vote for that election. So my expected turnout based on that average is 4,800 voters. So I am expecting that for this upcoming election, where I'm running for city council, there's going to be about 4,800 voters turning out. Things that you might want to take into account that might change that calculus, right? Because you might use the average of 3 or more similar past elections, but this year, this election cycle, there is a really hot issue, like a ballot measure initiative or something that is a really hot contested issue that people are really talking about, that you anticipate is going to drive up voter turnout. Maybe there is a really controversial or a really charismatic candidate that is running for something up ballot from you, and that you're expecting that's going to drive up voter turnout. Or maybe there's just maybe your race is the most exciting thing and there's nothing exciting up ballot from you that might actually drive voter turnout down a little bit if there's not a lot of excitement right outside of the one city council race. Is there changes in terms of voter registration laws or voter access laws in your community that might drive up voter turnout or might drive down voter turnout? Has there been aggressive voter registration campaigns? Are you expecting a lot more young people to show up this time than last time because of aggressive voter registration campaigns? So these are a number of things that you might want to consider, right? So maybe the average voter turnout that I'm expecting based on those 3 past elections is 4,800 voters, but there's this really incredibly polarizing ballot initiative that's going to be on the same ballot. So I'm going to bump up that number to 5,000 voters, right? Just drive up that voter turnout a little more. Better to be on the safe side, right? Better to think that your win number is a little higher than it actually needs to be, because the last thing you want is to identify your win number and have it be 20 voters less than what you actually need, and you reach your win number and you actually don't win the election. Okay, so now we've identified expected voter turnout for this upcoming election. In this example for City X, electing 2 city council members at large, 2 lunch items at large, is 4,800 voters. So back to our table that tells us what the winning threshold is depending on how many seats. We assume that the expected turnout is 4,800 votes. Our winning threshold for electing 2 candidates, again, is 1/3 of the vote plus 1. So we're going to determine our win number now. Our threshold is the number of votes that we're expecting, right? So this is expected turnout divided by the number of seats plus 1. And then plus 1, right? So like this is the winning threshold. So for city council in City X, we have 4,800 voters divided by 3. So that's the number of seats plus 1, right? There's 2 seats. We add 1 to that. So 4,800 divided by 3 plus 1 vote equals 1,601 votes. This is your win number if you're running for city council. So 2 candidates will have to reach that number. That's your calculation in order to be elected. Now, you don't want to, again, have your win number be like exactly the win number you need, because Maybe there's maybe there's a fire and a lot of people are going to not be in Albany to fill out their ballot and return it. Or maybe it's just going to be a very rainy day on election day and people are not going to turn out as much as you had expected. So you always want to build in a little cushion, right? If you, for whatever reason, the people that you are counting on to go out and vote for you, if a number of them don't go out and vote for you, you want to build a little cushion of having more voters that you can count on than the number that you actually need. So we recommend adding 3 to 5% cushion to that number. So instead of looking at a 33% plus 1, look at 36%, right, as your winning threshold. So if that's the case for this 2 open seats for the lunch items here in the City X, 1728 is the working win number. That's the number of votes that you will need to win one of the 2 seats. Let's talk about Board of Education, right? For City X, there's 3 seats that need to be filled. So the winning threshold gets lowered, right? It's 1/4 of the vote plus 1. So in this case, that is 1,201 votes. Again, you'd want to add that little bit of cushion to make sure that you're going to reach that winning threshold, even if some of your voters that you're counting on don't show up to vote. So instead of going for 25% of the vote plus 1, you can go to 28% of the vote. That is your winning goal winning number. So in this case, for Board of Education, to get one of the 3 seats that are open, you'll need 1,344 votes. That's your working win number. For some reason, okay. So that's the second part of math that I was saying I was going to go over with you all. Again, if you've ran campaigns before, if you've been a candidate before, this should make sense to you. It's just that change in what the winning threshold is, right? We're not talking about a majority of the vote, 50% plus 1, or in some places it's just the plurality of the vote, like getting more votes than anybody else. With ranked choice voting, you have to take into account what that winning threshold is and work out a winning number based on that information. So in a ranked choice voting election, a successful candidate should have a large number of first choices. It is virtually impossible for somebody to win a seat in a ranked choice voting election if they don't have a strong showing of first choice votes. Like this whole idea that you can have very poor showing of first choice votes, but somehow come from behind with second and third choice votes, that is just not a plausible way of winning a ranked choice voting election. That's just not the way that it can work. Successful candidate will have a large number of first choice votes, big winning coalition again, right? That includes a lot of people who are voting for you as their first choice. And then depending on how many candidates are running in the race, like how big the field is, you're going to need to build that coalition, build out that coalition with people who prefer other candidates, but are willing to rank you as their second or third choice on their ballot. And the questions that you need to ask yourself as a candidate is, how can I maximize my first choices? In other words, how can I build my base of strong supporters, the people who are going to rank me as their first choice, the people who are going to volunteer for my campaign, the people who are going to donate to my campaign, right? How can I make that base of first choice voters as large as it can? Who are those voters, right, that would align with me in terms of my values, my platform, my vision, that I can talk to and secure their first choice vote? And then how can I be the second choice candidate or the third choice candidate of people who rank other candidates as their first choice, but for whom it makes sense to have me as their backup choice? So we'll get into this a little more. Sorry, my computer is not working very well. Okay. How does ranked choice voting change elections? So if you ran a campaign before, maybe this is the way that you sort of visualize how things work, right? In the old way of doing business. In this very simple visual example, we have two candidates. We have orange and we have blue. And you are one of these candidates. Let's say that you are orange and your opponent is blue. Each one of you, you've assessed pretty much has the support of 40% of the voters. And you can count on those people. These are people who, again, are sort of volunteering for you. They have your lawn sign on their lawn. They're donating to your campaign, whatever the case may be. This is your base, right? You have 40% of the voters. Your opponent can count on 40% being their base. And this leaves about 20% of the voters as undecided, right? In the old way of doing business, the undecided vote, those 20% of the voters are the voters that every single candidate is trying to get. These are the voters that get all the attention, all the calls, all the door knocks. Every candidate wants to get that 20% or as much of that 20% as possible, because that's going to determine this race, right? You are taking your 40% voters, the people who support your campaign for sure, you're taking those folks for granted, right? Maybe you need to make sure that they have a get out to vote plan, and that maybe you need to bug them occasionally for a donation or for like a volunteering for a phone bank or whatever it may be. But you are counting on them. You don't have to convince them of anything. You pretty much know that they're going to show up and they're going to vote for you. Your opponent feels the same way about their base, and everybody's fighting for these 20% of undecideds. Now, to me, this is not real democracy, because only 20% of the voters are really being courted, if you will, right? The other 80% of the voters are taken for granted. This is definitely not the case with ranked choice voting. In ranked choice voting, this is the visual that I like to share, as opposed to that Venn diagram that we had in the previous slide. With ranked choice voting, I would invite you to think about it visually as a set of concentric circles, right? The circle in the middle, the darkest circle here, represents the intensity of support, right? It gets from dark to lighter color in terms of what the intensity of support is for you as a candidate or for your candidate. So that darker blue circle in the middle is your first choice voters. Again, this is like your solid base, people who will volunteer for you, donate money to you, who are, tabling and giving other voters information about your campaign. These folks, you can absolutely count on you being their first choice vote. The next circle out in lighter blue are voters who can be your second choice votes, right? So they likely, you know that they support a different candidate, one of your opponents in this race, that they prefer a different candidate in the race, but it makes sense for them to mark you as their second choice, because perhaps your policy positions are very similar to their favorite candidate's policy positions, right? Maybe you differ in a couple of ways, but it's just a good fit, right? If they can't have their favorite, they would want to have you as their backup plan, and so on and so forth, right? Then you move on to the next lighter blue circle, which is, okay, who are the voters that prefer another candidate as their first choice and actually prefer another candidate as their second choice, but given a scenario where neither of those preferred candidates are viable, would rather see me elected than somebody else. So this is a way to think about it that is very different than those sort of zero sum, us versus them, and this little sliver of undecided voters. With ranked choice voting, every single voter is on the table to support you, whether it's going to be as a first choice vote second choice vote, third choice vote, or whatever it is. So with ranked choice voting, you really want to think again about building a winning coalition of voters that includes your solid base and also includes those potential second choice and third choice votes. So let's talk about this in more depth. When we're talking about building this winning coalition of voters, it's all about mobilizing your base, right? So identifying who those voters are that will mark you as their first choice on their ballot. So first thing, again, this might be redundant for many of you, is figuring out who your personal base is, right? These are the people who you have a personal relationship with, that it just makes sense that they would be supporting your candidacy, right? These are your family members, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. Again, people who know you personally. Maybe you are a Boy Scout leader, and so it's like the people in your Boy Scout troop, extended, like the families and whatnot in there. Or maybe you are a pastor, and you know, maybe the folks in your faith community make sense, people who know you personally. Outside of that, you need to think of your base communities, and these are people who you may not know personally, right? They're not individuals, but rather groups of people. So which groups of people in your community, due to where they live in the community, their age, their ethnicity, their issues that they care about, their interests, their values, who should be part of your winning coalition? I like to think about this in terms of, sometimes in terms of demographics or ethnicity, right? If you are an African-American candidate running in your city, which groups, community organizations or civic groups or affinity groups are African-American community based, right? It would make sense for you to reach out to those groups because there is an affinity there in terms of who you represent in the community, what part of the community you may come from, what issues might be important to you. If you are an environmentalist, right, you really care about like just transit and like zero emissions and climate change and these kinds of things, then which groups are working on this in your community? That makes sense that they would be supporting you and endorsing you, right? So like reaching out to those groups. Remember that with personal base, like pretty much, I mean, these people know you, they love you, and you can count on their vote for the most part. With base communities, you need to win their support, right? You need to show up for them. You can't ask these groups to just support you because they're African-American and so are you, or they care about environmental issues and so do you. You need to show up for them. You need to show them that you are willing to roll up your sleeves and support their issues and show up to their actions and et cetera, in order to you know, have the standing to ask for their support. And with these groups, right, there you ask still, who should be ranking us, my campaign, as their first choice, and who is likely to be supporting a different candidate as their first choice, but it makes sense that would rank us as their second choice. And why, right? What is it? Is it about issues that we care about? Again, is it about demographics, geography, values, age? What is it? Why would this group of people that I don't know personally, that they should be supporting our campaign? So we've talked about personal base. We've talked about sort of like a community base, right? And then there is a beautiful thing with ranked choice voting that has to do with expanding your base, right? There's people who are disconnected from this civic process, from voting. Those folks who maybe show up every once in a while to vote, but not religiously every election. New voters who are just eligible to vote now, whether because they've just turned 18 or they just became citizens or whatever the case may be. there's always an opportunity to expand your base by tapping people that weren't counted in the 3 past elections that you average out the voter turnout for, right? There is, particularly now, right, young people, every election, there's lots of young people in every community pretty much that are newly eligible voters. Are they registered to vote? Are you talking to them? And why should they care about your campaign? So when you bring new people and new communities into the political process, the way to do this is to make people feel like they're being heard, right? So like listening to what they care about and tying that to the issues that you want to work on. So really having dialogue with people and with potential base communities, right? You guys care about housing. Let's talk about housing. What's important to you, right? As a young voter, like you're still living with your parents, you'd like to get a new apartment. Let's talk about the housing crisis in our community. What's important to you? So making sure that these people that are new to the political process, that they not only are gonna be registered to vote and are gonna show up to vote, the way that you make sure they're gonna show up to vote is to make sure that they feel like you're listening to them, that you are bringing the issues that they bring up to you, to the public conversation about it, into debates, into interviews with the media and locally or otherwise, to bring those community issues to the forefront. You can make sure that those voters that have been disengaged for whatever reason will be much more likely to actually show up for you in the election. Let's stop right there for some questions if we have any.
Sorry, I don't see any questions right now. So if
Okay.
you have any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. And if you think of the questions after the fact, you can always email to cityclerk@albanyca.org and we'll get them answered. Yes. Okay. So I got a couple questions now.
Okay.
So a candidate should definitely try to earn first place votes. After that, does it seem a good strategy to identify who you think will be the least popular candidate and appeal to their base as a second choice because it may be that only their second place votes get counted?
Yes, and you, whoever asked that question, are very astute because we're going to get exactly into that strategy more in depth here in the next section. But as a general response to that question, you should always be asking for people's first choice vote. That's the most important thing. But if they are saying, right, if you're talking to a voter and they're saying, you know what, I prefer somebody else, to not just say thank you so much and walk away from that conversation, but be able to ask for their second choice vote. And you do that by asking, okay, that's cool if you prefer somebody else. What is it about this candidate that makes them be your favorite, right? And then maybe they'll say, because you know, I have small children and they really care about education. They've been on the school board for years, and I really appreciate that they care about education. That's an opportunity for you to say, you know what, I also have small children in this community. Education is important to me. And, you know, always use truthful information, but you can say, you know, me and your favorite candidate worked on this issue for the school some years ago, and we share some values around this. Can I count on your second choice vote? So part of your strategy, the most important part of your strategy, is to build that winning coalition. And the way to do that is to get comfortable, super comfortable, asking for those second and third choice votes if a voter prefers somebody else.
Okay, we also have another question. The total number of voters that cast a vote for each of Albany's ballot measure in 2018, the last gubernatorial was about 7,200. If the electorate is that size again, What are the threshold for winning a council seat and winning a Board of Education seat? Thank you.
Wait, I didn't understand that question. Can you say it again, Ann?
The total number of voters that cast a vote for each of Albany's ballot measure in 2018, the last gubernatorial was about 7,200. If the electorate is that size again, what are the thresholds for winning a council seat and winning a Board of Education seat? Thank you.
Okay, so regardless of what the expected voter turnout is, and that's like figuring out what the expected voter turnout is going to be for the upcoming election, again, has to do with a number of things, right? What those voter turnouts numbers have been for past similar elections where there's like similar races, anything that changes up or down the ballot, voter registration efforts, etc. So defining that winning threshold, that voter turnout number is kind of like a skill, and each campaign is going to probably come up with slightly different estimates of what expected voter turnout is going to be. Regardless of what that number is, the winning thresholds are going to remain the same. It's going to be 33 plus 1 of the vote for each of the 2 council seats that are going to be filled, and 25% plus 1 of that expected voter turnout for the 3 Board of Election seats that are going to be filled. So whether you're expecting 10,000 people to show up or 5,000 people to show up, it's going to be 1/3 of the vote plus 1 for the city council, and 1/4 of the vote plus 1 for the Board of Elections. Does that make sense?
So I guess it's actually our mayor asking the question. It's asking what is the win number. So I guess we're just doing the math here. So 7,200 divided by the number of seats. So 3 plus 1. So the minimum is 2401. But for city council.
For city council, yeah.
But if you want to, like Maria mentioned earlier, to account for additional 3%, then we're looking at 7,200 times 36%, which we're looking at 2,592. And then for Board of Education, divided by 4 plus 1. The minimum is 1801. I took 7,200 divided by 4 plus 1. It's 1801. But as Maria mentioned earlier, plus 3% or so. So 7,200 times 36%, we're looking at 2,592. Hopefully that answers the question.
Your win number is going to be based on your expected voter turnout, which that number can vary wildly between election cycles depending on what's up and down ballot, right? Like I am not sure how Albany elections work, but maybe some election cycles when you're electing city council members, there's also you're also electing a mayor, for example, right? Usually more people show up to vote, turn out to vote when there's a mayoral race than when there's only city council races, for example, right? So like, it doesn't matter what your expected turnout is. You want to get that number as close as you can to what it's going to be in reality. And this is like an educated exercise, right? Like to average past elections and figure out, are there things that are going to turn out voters more or less? You want a really good estimate of what the voter turnout is actually going to be. And then the winning threshold is going to be the same. It's going to be either 36% of that with building in your cushion, or 28% of that building in your cushion, depending on whether you're talking about city council or Board of Education.
And for those of you who are interested to see what the past voter turnout is, you can always go to the Alameda County voter registrar's office. website, which is acvote.org. Again, it's acvote.org. And under one of the tab, it says elections, and you can, it has data, and I don't have it in front of me. So, but there is data in there that you can go back to many years to see how many voters turned out to vote for certain election years. Okay, we have another question.
Let's have it.
Is it advantageous for candidates of similar views to band together to own the first, second, and third choice votes, running, for example, as a progressive bloc, sharing postcards and events? Or is each candidate better chasing first place on their own?
So that's a choice that you'll have to make strategically, but we're going to talk about that strategy in the next section here. Sometimes it's very advantageous to run as a slate, right? A progressive slate or what have you. I want to come back to this point about the win number, right? So in this example that you see on your screen, which we went over a minute ago, we have, in this fictitious city, we have estimated that 4,800 voters are going to turn out. And let's say that I'm running for Board of Education, right? So I've calculated 4,800 voters are gonna turn out to vote, and I need to get building in that cushion, right? I need to get 1,344 votes. This is an election in the city at large, right? So let's say that in my campaign, I am able to convene to bring together 100 volunteers, right? And this would include your family members, your sort of like your base community people who are aligned on you on values. You have 100 people helping you win this campaign, which is not an unreasonable, unreachable number of volunteers to get, right? You're running for Board of Education, you can get 100 people to volunteer for you. Basically, if you get each volunteer to get 13 people in their networks to vote for you, you have won a seat on the Board of Education. This is the beauty about this kind of voting, is that you really can target your message, right, to those voters that will align with you because, again, because of values, because of demographics, geography, age, whatever it is that you need. But getting 1,300 votes in a city the size of this city, which is somewhat comparable to your city, it's not insurmountable, right? If you can get 100 volunteers and each one of them to secure the vote of 13 people to rank you as their first choice, you've won a seat. It doesn't require incredible amounts of money or like a big political machine behind you. It is something that perhaps a community organizer can reach, or somebody who's just been a community leader for some time. So just wanted to put perspective in there. Even though you'd be campaigning in the whole city, you can target which parts of the city or which types of groups that are operating in your city, affinity groups, civic groups, demographic groups that you really want to connect with and ask for their first choice votes and or their second choice votes and so forth. Do we have any other questions, Anne?
No, it looks like you've answered them.
Okay. So we're going to get into campaign brass tacks and answer many of the questions that have been posed so far. So when you are planning a campaign, campaigns basically have 3 resources, and that's about it. We have people, we have time, and we have money, right? The only thing out of these 3 resources that we can't get more of is time, right? You can always find more people, get more volunteers, do more outreach, You can always do more fundraising, have events, figure out a way that people can donate, small dollar amounts, whatever it may be. People and money you can build. Time is limited and time is what you have. The time you have is what you have. So if you're a seasoned campaign person, you know this, right? So like the main thing that you will do is create a timeline, right? It ends on election day. What needs to happen? How are you going to best leverage and utilize the other two resources in the timeline that you have? Campaign plans are developed to determine how best to use these resources. And ranked choice voting will impact your strategy on how to use these resources, because ranked choice voting is a little bit different, right? So let's get into that. One thing that you need to do right away in a ranked choice voting campaign, as you do in other election models, is to do your research, right? Know your competition. You need to do factual comparative research on what are the issues that are driving this campaign season. Again, are there hot topics, hot issues in your community that everybody is talking about? Maybe that is something that is very polarizing and driving out voter turnout, increasing civic discourse about that issue in your community. And where do all the candidates stand on those hot button issues, including yourself, right? What are the issues that are driving your campaign specifically? What are you running on? Are you running on fair housing? Are you running on we need to improve our parks and trails? Are you running on just being in opposition to the current person who's holding your the seat that you're running for? What are your issues for your campaign, and how does the field of candidates align on your issues? Are other people running on the same types of issues? Is somebody running on the complete opposite take on that specific issue? Once you figure out, right, what you're running on, what everybody else is running on, and where everybody kind of falls on the different issues that are important to your community at this time, where can you find common ground with the other folks running for the seat that you're running for? And where do you stand out? This is all super important. So this is very different than doing research in other ways of other electoral systems where research is sometimes called opposition research, right? You're basically finding out as much as you can from your opponents so that you can find out where you can go negative, right? Where you can point out to the voters the poor decisions that your opponents have made, times where they've just voted really against the interests of the community on something if they've been in elected office, any scandal, right, that they have in their lives, personal or professional lives. You're doing oppositional research, you're getting ammunition to go against your opponents. With ranked choice voting, that is a losing strategy, and we're going to talk more about this. You're doing research. I don't even like to call it on your opponents, but on the cohort of people who are running against you in this race. There are going to be things that you can align with others on, and that's going to be really important to know what those things are. And there's things that are going to be distinguishing you from the race, the rest of the candidates, maybe something that only you are talking about, or you are talking about in a really different way than everybody else, or you have a history with that issue that distinguishes you from the rest of the field. So now that you have all that research, right, you know where everybody stands on all of the things that you've decided are the important things to get research on. You want to figure out, okay, who is likely to get eliminated first, right? Say that, and for this, you have to assume that nobody will win on just first choice votes, which somebody might. But where the strategy comes in is like how to get those second and third choice votes, right? who's going to be eliminated first? In this lunch item example, I am, let's say that I am hamburger, that's my candidate, and I am thinking that chicken's probably going to get more first choice votes than me. But I'm going to be coming in second. I'm going to be doing pretty good. I'm going to be a viable candidate after the first round. And I'm pretty sure that tacos is going to be eliminated first. They're just not running a good campaign. The issues that they're running on are just not resonating with most of the community. So it's going to be my educated guess, right? That tacos is going to be eliminated first. How do tacos candidates feel about me? Does taco, right, as a candidate, do they have similar values as I do? Do they care about similar things? Or are they totally opposite values? Do we have nothing in common, right? Are we running on completely distinct and non-compatible platforms? That's going to be important, right? If you feel, if as hamburger, that's my candidate, if I feel that taco voters probably align with my candidate on many issues, again, maybe, you know, it is about education and expanding green spaces in the community. That's something that both candidates, hamburger and tacos, care about. Then absolutely, I want to have a plan so that when taco gets eliminated, those voters are going to have ranked me as their second choice. And we'll get into how to track these things and how to, as a candidate, as a campaign, know, right, who's voting for who and who their second choice is. But in terms of your research, right, figure this out. If I think tacos is going to be eliminated first, what are they running on? How do we align on those issues that they're running on, that I'm running on? What is the common ground and where do we differ significantly? And then, you know, the trick is to target. How are you going to target? So you're going to target your first choice votes, your first choice voters, because they're going to tell you, right, when you are making phone calls or doing a text bank or going to door knocking, you're going to ask people, you know, I'm here with so-and-so, I'm running for city council. These are the things that are important to me. Can I count on your first choice vote? They're going to say, oh my God, I love that. Do you have a lawn sign? You'll definitely get my first choice vote. And then you'll ask them to volunteer for your campaign and to help you get elected, right? That's going to be your primary target. After that, you're going to figure out again, right? Okay, who's likely to be eliminated first? How do I align with those voters? Who's likely to be eliminated next? And how do I align with those voters? So in an RCV election, targeting should be tiered to prioritize first choice support and then broaden to those universes of likely lower ranking support, as we saw in that graphic with a concentric circles, right? Secure those first choice votes and then make sure that you have a contingency plan for voters who are going to rank you as their second choice and voters who are going to rank you as their third choice and so forth. This might be, if you've worked in campaigns before, this targeting, right? When you door knock or phone bank or text bank, you keep track of the data, right? You keep track of what voters are telling you. Usually in sort of like more traditional campaigns, this is sometimes like a 3-tiered data points, right? Either a strong support, undecided, or supporting somebody else. That's as far as you go. With ranked choice voting, that gets a little bit more nuanced, right? And this is important for you because if somebody tells you that they strongly support you and you can absolutely count on their first choice vote, then that's awesome. You make sure that that person has a voting plan, that they're going to get out and vote or turn in their ballot or whatever the case may be. And you're going to ask them, right? Would you like to volunteer for my campaign? We need help, fundraising, phone banking, whatever it may be. If somebody tells you, you know what, I am just learning about the candidates, but I like what you're telling me, and I'm likely, you know, I'm learning about the other candidates, but right now with what I've learned, I think it's possible that I'll rank you as my first choice vote. Again, right? You tap into them in terms of additional support. Awesome. Would you like a lawn sign? Can I come back and talk to you in a couple of weeks after you've learned about the other candidates and see where you stand? And if you come back and they're like, I'm not sure, say, okay, well, I would love your first choice vote, but if you find another candidate that you align more with, I would love to count on your second choice vote. Can I have your first or second choice vote, right? You're still going for that first choice vote, but in case you don't get it, you're asking for that second choice vote. If somebody is just completely undecided, if they're like, I didn't even know we had an election coming up, I have no idea. This is the first I hear of it. I know nothing about who's running or what they stand for. There's still an opportunity to persuade them to choose you as their first choice, right? You have a conversation with them based on the issues they care about. You listen more than you talk, right? You listen to what they care about, and then you talk about how that aligns with your platform. And maybe, say, I'd love to get your first choice vote, but if you're going to choose somebody else, I would love to have your second choice vote. So far, you're still kind of having the same conversation, right? You're still going for that first choice vote, but you're sort of setting up yourself to be their second choice vote if they choose to go with somebody else. With ranked choice voting, if they tell you, you know what, I appreciate you coming today or calling me today, but I actually love this other candidate and I'm going to vote for them. The old way of doing things is you say, okay, well, thank you for your time, and you go to the next house or you make the next call. With ranked choice voting, that's still an opportunity to say, what is it about this candidate, this other candidate that you really like? Like, what are the issues and the values that they care about that align with you and your values? You listen to that voter and then you see if you can align with them, right? Because you've done your research, you're prepared to have this conversation with this voter. You know what the other candidates care about and why voters might prefer them, and you know where the points of alignment might be with each of the other candidates. So you're still persuading them. You're still saying, I understand you like somebody else. Can I count on your second choice vote because I also care about these things that you care about? And if somebody says, I'm absolutely not going to rank you as my first choice vote, I absolutely like somebody else, you have that opportunity still to get their second choice vote. And if they tell you, I absolutely will not be giving you my first choice vote, I absolutely love a different candidate, and I actually don't like you at all, and please don't come back, and I'm not going to give you my second choice vote, that's the only time that you just let go and get this voter off your list. You don't want to bother them again. There's no persuasion there. They've made up their mind. They just plainly don't like you, which is a voter's right not to like you. That's fine. This voter can have somebody else as their first, second, and third choice votes. You're not going to try to get this voter's vote. This is very different than the way that these targeting conversations happen, and that data around these targeting conversations is documented. So let's look at how to document these things. Now, depending on what kind of resources you have and what kind of campaign you're running, you might have a very fancy high-tech voter database that you're using, like Van or something like that. Or you can just create an Excel spreadsheet, right, to keep track of the conversations that your campaign team is having with voters. Both ways are totally effective, and you can use anything in the middle. The important thing is what kind of data you are actually collecting from conversations with voters. And this is best practice that I'm going to share with you right now. Again, it doesn't matter what kind of database or system you're using to record conversations, but basically you want to have the name of the voter that you're looking to talk to, any sort of demographic information from them, right? Like gender and age or something like that. You want to have, and voters may not be able to tell you this information, but if you can, collect information about who their favorite candidate is, and if they've thought about a backup choice, right, their second choice. You want to know if you personally talked, or your volunteer or whatever personally connected with this voter, or if they spoke to somebody else in the household. Maybe they were not home, or it was a bad time, right? If somebody refused to talk, if somebody was inaccessible, or if that was just the wrong information in terms of that person actually doesn't live there anymore. So this is kind of like the way that you would do this with any kind of election. So if you ran an election, this probably looks familiar. Then you want to document the level of support that the voter has for you. Are they strong supporters? Like, do they say, I'm going to rank you as my first choice? Are they leaning in support to you? Are they undecided? Are they leaning towards somebody else, or are they absolutely going to give somebody else their first choice vote? You want to know this. You want to know this because when it's time to target, right, those who's going to get eliminated first and how do I connect with their voters, you want to know who those, that candidate that's going to be eliminated, who are the voters that you talk to that prefer that other candidate, but might be a good fit for you as a second choice vote. So the other thing that you want to document is who else are they supporting of the other people in your cohort. So once you have this information, you can really use this for your strategy in terms of targeting, right? So I am hamburger, and I think tacos is going to be eliminated first after the first round. So I'm going to make sure that I talk to the people that I meant to talk to. And if they weren't home, I want to make sure that I keep track of that so that I can call them back, right? And actually get a hold of that person. If I talk to a voter and they say, you know what, I am supporting tacos, that's my favorite candidate, and I might be open to supporting you as a second choice. You want to know that because you want to make sure that you reach out close to election day when it's clear to you that taco is going to be eliminated first. You want to circle back and do just like a target campaign for all those voters you talk to that prefer taco as their favorite candidate. Go back and talk to each one of those voters and ask for their second choice vote. So this is how targeting is really different in a ranked choice voting election than in a regular plurality election or just a single winner election. All right, let's stop there for a minute and give time for a few questions if we have any.
I'm not seeing any, but earlier I think there was a question in regards to, or not a question, but it was assumed voter turnout was about 7,200. So I used a little bit of time and looked up the previous voter turnout if people are interested. In 2020, I'll start with 2014. 2014, there was about 6,130. 2016, 9,500. 2018, 8,900. And in 2020, probably due to the vote by mail, it went up to 10,700. Those are approximate numbers, of course.
And that's an excellent, thank you, Anne, for doing that. That's an excellent picture, right? You see that the numbers have increased steadily over the last number of cycles. So you'd want to build in that trajectory in your voter turnout calculations. All right, short of any other questions, I'd like to move along to make sure that we can wrap up this training in the next few minutes. Are we good? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So an effective field strategy incorporates ranked choice voting education into voter outreach in general. And I'm not asking for you as a campaign volunteer or team member to become a ranked choice voting educator and use a lot of your time with voters talking about ranked choice voting. This can be done very surreptitiously without a lot of investment, but RCV education should be incorporated into all your literature and all your scripts when you're talking to voters or doing a text bank with voters. So let's look about that a little bit. Candidates are the front line of voter education, especially in a ranked choice voting election where every single vote is in play. Even if people are supporting somebody else as their favorite candidate, you still want to be talking to many of those voters to build your winning coalition. The most common way that voters learn about ranked choice voting is through candidates like you if you're running. So educating voters to rank their ballots help your chances of getting elected and ensures that all voters are fully enfranchised. So if voters know what the changes are, right, again, that there's a change coming, that their ballot is going to look different, that this is what it's going to look like, and that this is how you use your ballot, they are likely to vote the way that they intend to vote, the way that they mean to vote, and this is going to help your chances of getting elected if your voters can use their ballot correctly. Every single person in your team, staff, and volunteers should have a basic understanding of how ranked choice voting works, and basic understanding that's like agreed upon messaging points on how to talk about it to voters when you're doing outreach. Everyone on your team must understand and be able to explain at a very basic level how it works. And all volunteers should be able to describe how a ballot works and point to additional resources to provide more information. So again, nobody is asking everybody to be an expert, but be able to explain basic terms how it works. And if people have further questions, even if people don't have further questions, just give them a piece of like a printed material with a mock, right? Like a sample mock ballot that they can look at, that they can fill out, that has, for more information, go to, and it could be the, you know, the county website or whatever it may be. An effective ranked choice voting communication strategy always incorporates as for lower rankings. And this goes to the point that somebody brought up before, like, is it a winning strategy to team up with other candidates running in the race if they have similar platforms than you do or similar values that you do? It is definitely worth considering doing that. It could be a cost-saving thing for you, right? If you're splitting the cost of lit materials, mailers, or like door hangs, or whatever it is that you're doing. Here's a few examples, right, of people who did just that. In the bottom there towards the left, we have two women who ran for city council in St. Paul, Minnesota. They're both about, you know, they're similar-ish age. They're both from the Asian American community in St. Paul. And they decided, right, we're likely have the same sort of like base of voters. So instead of asking them to pick favorites one against the other, let's just run as a slate, right? So the way they did it is they ran these ads together, they did their mailers together, and each of their messages was, "What, vote for me for number one, vote for her for number two." And the other one would say the same thing, vote for me as number one, vote for her as number two. That way that would ensure that their base felt that they could actually support both of them, right? They could actually pick their favorite and have a backup plan be the other one, and ensure that one of them was going to get elected, and indeed they did. We have some other examples of that for different races. Sweet for governor, right? Campaigning together instead of against. The way to main politics should be two people running for governor, similar platforms. Vote for me, number one, vote for them, number two. And then, so that's ranked choice voting education baked into your materials. Nobody's talking about ranked choice voting, right? Nobody has mentioned ranked choice voting or a ranked ballot or anything else. You just informing voters, you're going to be able to define who your first choice is and who your second choice is. And that's it. That's all the voter needs to know is like, I'm going to be able to rank my preferences in my choices in order of preference. That's ranked choice voting education right there. If you don't choose to do this, right, if you choose to go at it on your own, which is a totally fine strategy as well, and very much a winning strategy depending on your race and your community. Here we have a mailer from London Breed in San Francisco, right? She's not talking about any of the other candidates. She's just saying vote London Breed number 1, 2, or 3. That's it. You're educating voters on ranked choice voting just by saying, rank me as your first, second, or third choice. That tells voters, oh, I'm going to have an opportunity to rank my choices. Same thing over here to the right. This is for ranked choice voting election in Sandy, Utah. It's a very small town in Utah. Real people of Sandy rank Monica Z number 1 for mayor. This informs voters that there's going to be a number 1 and presumably a number 2 and a number 3 and so forth. So this is what I mean by incorporating ranked choice voting education into all of your messaging. You don't have to talk about ranked choice voting even. Just make sure that voters know that they can rank, that they'll be given the opportunity to rank. And you can do this by adding 3 words on your mailer, right? It's not, you don't have to invest a lot of time or people or money into doing this. And I know that we're a minute over time, but I want to go really briefly on this point about the risks of negative campaigning in a ranked choice voting campaign. Going negative is the way to go in most of the ways that we elect our representatives. With ranked choice voting, it's not a winning strategy, and this is why. If I am going to be needing your vote, your second choice vote, at the end of the day, I'm going to be needing your second choice vote to get elected. The worst strategy is for me to alienate you as a voter by saying negative things about the candidate that you actually prefer, right? So instead of me saying, you know, I go to your door and you tell me you're voting for somebody else and me just saying, okay, thank you, bye, and not asking for the second choice vote, or saying, you know, you should really reconsider that decision because this candidate that you are supporting is a horrible person and they should not get your support because they've done these horrible things, and instead you should support me. That's not going to fly, right? If you've alienated that voter in terms of what their values are and the candidate that they picked as their favorite, if you told them that they're a bad, degenerate person for making that choice, you are not going to get that voter's second choice vote when the time comes to get it. So the best strategy is to distinguish yourself from the other candidates without disparaging them on a personal or professional level. You can say, you know, I'm different than the other candidates because I believe in these, you know, these are my values and this is my platform and nobody else is talking about these things, without saying, and therefore they're not intelligent people and they're not serious candidates and you shouldn't consider them because clearly I'm the best choice here. The risks of going negative are real. When it's time to go ask for the second choice votes for voters that you've identified are voting for somebody else, that's going to be very difficult if you are on the public record, right, speaking negatively about the candidate that they like. And finally, in terms of going negative, as a candidate, you determine the tone of your campaign. So you get to set the tone from the top, top to your campaign manager, to like your field people, all the way down to the newest volunteer that you may have on your team. Make sure that people know that where, right, you can make a choice. Like these are the things where I'm, as a candidate, I am willing to go negative, and to which extent, with which candidates. But make sure that everybody from the top down knows where you draw the line. We're not going to talk negative about these things or about these people. And we are going to go a little bit negative on these couple of issues with this candidate, and we're going to only take it that far. And I'm saying this because particularly sort of at the lower levels of your volunteer workers, that's where social media stuff happens. That can get really ugly, right? As we know, people have very little filters, and going negative can happen very quickly on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever it may be. You need to have control of how negative you're willing to go and where, and make sure that everybody knows that on your team. Okay, that is the end of our presentation. I appreciate you staying a couple minutes longer than allotted. I'm happy to stay if anybody has a couple more questions, but we can wrap it up otherwise.
Sorry about that. I just switched a slide so that people can see that the city website on ranked choice voting is albanyca.org/RCV. And just we do have one question that came in, if you can answer it in a little bit. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email to cityclerk@albanyca.org. The phone will be a little bit more difficult, as you know, we will have to hand write down your questions. So if you can email in, that would be much appreciated. This presentation, along with the recording of this video, will be uploaded to our website later on this week. So if you have any friends or family or people who you talk to that said, "Oh, I missed that information session," please just let them know to check the city website, www.albanyca.org/RCV. So the question that we have is, in the prior city council election, there were two candidates who ran a coordinated campaign. One got more votes than the other. Let's assume they came in number 1 and number 2 in the last election. This year, what if every voter who wanted the two candidate slate to win put the more popular candidate as their first choice and the other in the slate as their second choice? With RCV at large, isn't it possible those second choice voters never get counted? And as it more likely with ranked choice voting at large, that the less popular candidate on the slate doesn't get elected?
So with ranked choice voting, whether you're electing a single winner or you're electing multiple winners, it is very unlikely that the least popular candidate is going to get elected, because again, you need that broad base of support, right? You're reaching either a majority of support or a relative majority if you're electing more than one candidate. So this is something that I like about ranked choice voting as an election method, regardless of how many seats you're filling, is that it is a way to ensure that the people that you are actually electing are consensus candidates, right? Like that they're palatable to most of the voters. In terms of the first part of the question, I mean, this goes a little bit into the weeds in terms of like surplus vote, right? So like if there's a slate of two candidates that are running on similar platforms, and most of the voters are ranking both of them, they want both of them elected, then whoever gets the majority, like more votes than the other one, and reaches that threshold, if they get more votes than that threshold, then a portion of each of their votes is going to go to the next choice on their ballot, which presumably is the other candidate on the same slate, right, in the similar values slate. So it bodes well for both of those candidates if they're running as a slate. If they actually gathered the support of most of the voters in the city, it's very likely with this kind of voting that they both will be elected. I hope that answers it.
Okay, as I said, if anyone think of a question later on, or if something isn't unclear, please go ahead and send an email to cityclerk@albanyca.org. We'll either answer it or we'll make sure that it's in the next round of our workshop or sessions. Thank you very much, and thank you for all those that stuck around and stayed till the end of this presentation. Thank you. Have a
Thank you
good
all.
evening.